Hello, Beatriz.
Hello, Lucas.
Hello. I think we have a nice topic for today because I just want to remind people, or for those who don't know Beatriz, that Beatriz is a native uh, from Buenos Aires who lives in the USA and he's been living in the USA for many decades. And so she has a unique view on what Buenos Aires and Argentina and tango are like in a kind of dual way, like a very strange dual way that I haven't met anyone before who knows both these perspectives of a native, of a local, and of a foreigner. Um, and she went to Buenos Aires this year. And I just wanted to talk about some of her impressions. So can you tell me about some of the impressions you've gotten of Buenos Aires during your stay?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And I have some pointers here that I'm going to be referring to as we talk. Uh, it's really impossible to talk about Buenos Aires today without talking about the inflation rate that the people of Buenos Aires, of Argentina, are living under. Um, it was 110% in April of this year, and is expected to hit 126% in 2023. If it didn't hit already, I didn't check for the last few days. Now, most salaries go up as inflation go up, I was told, but not much. Um, not as much. That is, there is always a lag. The inflation is always greater than whatever raising salary people have. When I arrived in on March 1st, the dollar was exchanged for 370 pesos, Argentine pesos. When I left in April 30, each dollar was paid almost $500. Now that translates into the cost of life, going to the supermarket to buy groceries and all the basic necessities of life. This is how people are living there right now. And this is very tragic, um, particularly if one thinks that at the turn of the 20th century, Argentina was one of the five economic potencies in the world due to the exportation of grains and meats. And I mean, there is oil also. I mean, the country is rich, the soil is rich.
Yes.
Um, this is true, yet you can walk around the city and do not perceive any abnormality. That was my first surprise. So I don't see people jumping out of windows or ready to do that, or desperate, or pulling their hairs or having conversations about that. Um, so how to understand this? That was my question that I gave myself for this brief presentation today. First, the common person thinks that sooner or later things are going to turn around. And you hear that everywhere. I hear it in, when I change my shoes at El Beso, at the Milonga, how women are talking about, oh yeah, this shall pass, And the price of the Milonga keeps going up, the entry, of course. And it's, for them is a lot of increase. For us, it's cents. I mean, we are paying just nothing for entries to the Milongas. Um, so how do I understand this? One is that Argentines have suffered many tragedies like this one. Um, and then I look up, how big were the ones before? And I found that in 1976, inflation surpassed 600%. In 1989, inflation reached an unprecedented 5,000%. And in 2001, the president printed money. His name is Menem. And that was a happy time. You know, we Argentines in Miami, they call us, give me two, because the dollar was equal to the peso. So give me two televisions, give me two of this, give me two, whatever. But then, as a result of that policy, we had to engage in a $100 billion debt, which is the world's biggest ever sovereign default. And we defaulted. Okay, so now I encounter sometimes service people, like, for example, a manicure or a pedicure or the person that does my hair. And they don't talk about this. They are, if they talk about it, they make any comments, they are so happy with the job they do. They talk about how happy they are with the job they do. So that struck me as also interesting, that despite everything, there seems to be a high level of job satisfaction among, we're not talking about, we're talking at maybe lower middle class. Despite all this tragedy, people are like usual. They are gracious, they are engaging, they smile, they respond to, if they engage your eyes and you're crossing them in the street, they smile, they are as usual. So it hasn't seemed to have affected the basic cultural personality of the people of Buenos Aires. Also, despite this tragedy, the restaurants in the areas where I circulated, like downtown Buenos Aires, districts of Recoleta, San Nicolás, San Telmo, all the restaurants are filled with patrons. Reservations are necessary or you don't eat. The same thing with cafe concerts, but I'll talk about that under the arts. Now, you see something is wrong visually, you can see, you don't see it anywhere, but there are very few taxis in the street. We used to go out in the street and extend our arm, and there was this line of taxis passing. So all you had to do is get out and stop a taxi and take a taxi. Now it's not that way. Now you get out of your house, maybe 15 minutes before you should find a taxi, and then wait at the corner or until one comes and be on time, or leave as you used to do, 2 minutes before, and you get late to what you're going to be. And what's happening there? That my conversations with taxi drivers, I always enjoy them because they tell me exactly what it is. And Uber is eating them up. So Uber did the trick that it did in the United States also. It gave us this gift of lower fees, and then we get used to that, to have for $12 to go from here to the airport. And then one day it goes the $12 to the airport, or the $20 today is $75-$80 in Uber. So they are doing the same thing in Argentina, and sometimes they use also the dynamic fare. According to how much demand there is, they raise the rates. So I don't take Ubers because I don't like Uber, and because they are eating, to me, is an emblematic business of the taxi drivers. In my books, I always talk about the taxi drivers because I had so many stories that are so fascinating, that you cannot have those conversations with the taxi drivers from Uber. They don't even know what the street they are driving. You say, oh, from the back, raining, what street are we driving? Oh, let's meet up. And they look at the GPS. So, to me, not to have taxi drivers to talk with when I go to Buenos Aires is going to be a huge loss. Just a number, there were 40,000 taxis in the city of Buenos Aires a few years ago, let's say around the pandemic or a little before. And now they are 8,000. 8,000. And I'm wondering how long these 8,000 are going to last, because those guys have to put gasoline in the tanks. And the rates are so cheap. You can go for $2 or $3. You can take a taxi for a half-hour ride. And some of them feel guilty that they are charging us so much. But with dollars, it's really ridiculous, the cost of a taxi today. So now I want to talk a little bit about the arts. The consumption of art is very high, and the art offerings are really very high. As far as I am concerned, Buenos Aires is a first world country in the quantity and quality of the art that is offered. And by that, I mean theater plays with the scripts, and Argentinian scripts, usually the ones I went to see. The acting is outstanding. Films, the industry films is really excellent, and the quality of the films. And then the concerts, there is music. You can listen to music every day of the week if you know how to look up, how to Google that. And I'm talking about great music. And because there are musicians, musicians come out of the walls in Buenos Aires. There are so many and so fascinating to listen to music there. And then some venues are totally free. For example, the Centro Cultural Kirchner, CCK that we call it, the Usina del Arte. Those are state-of-the-art venues for thousands of people. And they are totally free. And the Centro Cultural Borges in downtown Buenos Aires also. Most museums are free also. Maybe they have a nominal fee entrance 1 or 2 days a week. So the arts, nothing has killed the arts. Not the junta, not the inflation, not the corruption of the politicians, not the worst situations have killed the culture. The culture is strong because there are many people producing good culture, good. I didn't mention the writers, but also writers. I want to talk a little bit about families, because I also observe families and been with some families. And the elderly have a much better life in Buenos Aires than they would have in the United States. For example, there are cafes that I frequent, that I see that there are groups of 6 men that meet at the same time every day. And I call them the elderly residents. That's the elderly residents. It's like, they live in their homes and they meet at the cafe with total freedom. And they walk around holding hands with family or with a companion if they cannot walk. So that's one thing that I really think, that the elderly enjoy life at home a whole lot more than in the USA. And also the extended family still exists and is well. And in my opinion, as a psychologist now, it benefits both the children and the grandparents, because since there is communication there, while this parents work and do what they need to do, the parents, the grandparents, and the children have a lot of communication. So it benefits the grandparent that feels useful and enjoy the grandchildren, and it benefits the grandchildren. I mean, grandparents are very important. We just lost the sense of what they are in the United States culture because of the high mobility that caused that in the first place. So I want to wrap up with some observations that I found interesting from a person, a man in his mid 40s who lives happily parallel to the system because he doesn't buy the system. He sees the behind the scene direct sides of the system. So he says, I said that, I asked him how people were not really complaining or seem to be suffering enough from this horrible situation. And he says, society is anesthetized. It's under anesthesia. The system leads us by the nose wherever they want to lead us. And today they do it through the internet, through popular culture, exported, imported, exported, but imported cultural, popular culture, and also they just entice us in certain directions. He says, but this is new, not new in Latin America. It started in the 1400s. He means like when the conquistadores first came to Latin America. He said they came bringing toys for us, as the inhabitants in the 1400s, the Indians. So they brought little mirrors, but really they came to steal from us. All that silver in Peru and and gold mines in Brazil. They came to steal, but they gave us this thing. They distracted us, and now they distract us with the internet. And then he says, now China is coming here to rob us. Apparently, there is something going on with China that I couldn't get ready for today, but they are reminding them of this new, well, he didn't talk about the United States because the United States has done that forever. So he talks about the conquistadores and the new thing, which is the Chinese. So he also said that people are very complacent in a way. The Argentine is a very complacent person in terms of getting out in the street and protesting. The protests that we have are not the people, are people that are hired to protest to support or certain causes and certain political representatives of the politics. He says, and it is true, in 2001, when the banks closed, they went out to protest. And I happened to be in Buenos Aires when the banks closed. And it chills me to remember people that had the savings in the banks shaking the windows or banging on doors and desperate because all their life savings were there, and all of a sudden the banks are closing.
Yeah.
Closed. And this were all the banks, were the Citibank, the Boston Bank, all the foreign banks, as well as the Argentine banks. So he said that was the only time the Argentines went out and protested. It was, it was just the stealing of the money from the banks, and they had a face or a place, not a face, but they had a place where he could protest. So with that, I round up my what I had prepared for today, and next time I will be very happy to talk about how I felt at the Milongas, what I saw.
Yes, but for
And
you it was important to give a bit of context about
yes,
some things people foreigners should know. And well, thank you
yes.
for your presentation. And
Okay. Thank you, Lucas.
I hope to see you again soon.
Whenever you are ready, I'll be ready. Bye.